we finally got everything at the house. I've got the wood for the mount. Right past that, underneath the blue tarp, if you pan over there, we've got some solar panels. Underneath the camper, we got some inverters. The last thing we really need to go is we need to go to Home Depot and get a circuit breaker box, a couple panels, wiring, different things like that. Make sure that we keep objects like this away from the demolition expert. But we are in full go mode, so I can't wait to show you guys how all this is going to play out.
For the ground mount, we are going to use a ground screw foundation. Then we will add posts and horizontal braces. We'll use diagonal support beams as the bones of our sun-facing slope and a network of joists, wraps, caps, and rails to mount our panels to. You may notice I'm also adding framing in the center. That's for a solar water heater experiment and a video for another day. Before we dive into the project, we need to clear and prep the area. We used a compass and string lines to find our array azimuth, which is true south. If you're using an iPhone, it is probably set to magnetic south, not true south. So make sure to check your settings if you want it to be true south and actually, like facing the sun. I created this layout doc that showed us the exact requirements we needed for our foundation. Using this document, we began to place red flags where each post should go. On my layout documents, you'll notice diagonal measurements. These are used to ensure each post is in square. Before I finalize my post location, I ensure that all my diagonals are correct and then pre-stake in some 1/2 inch rebar. Later, I will remove this rebar from the ground and I'm left with sort of a pilot hole for my ground screws. The ground screws are really cool, but
getting these screws into the ground is extremely difficult. We got sandy soil, it's very rocky, it grabs onto a rock and it pushes off to the side, completely bent up our 1/2 inch rebar pulling it around. So luckily they came with these steel bars, but in typical fashion, I bent this one too very quickly.
We ended up taking a homeschool physics lessons break right here, where I explained the mechanics of a lever arm to my kids. We used increasingly longer lever arms until even Ryan could get the screws in. The ground screws come with lags for securing your posts, and they say that they are not affected by frost heave, but we're gonna see if that holds true or not this winter.
Now, I could have gone with only 6x6 posts, but I decided to go with 12 4x4 posts. So this gives me similar structural stability, but it gives me twice the amount of ground screws.
I figured double the ground screws, double the uplift resistance. We'll see what happens. With all my ground screws finally in the ground, I double check my square and see if I need to change anything before I move on to putting my posts in. To start the post, we're going to set in the front and back rows first. These posts we will put in oversized at first and trimmed down later. Each post is temporarily secured with just a few screws, and I use 2x4s to brace them for now. My goal is to create a level skirt of 2x6s that will wrap the entire structure. I'm calling these 2x6s my horizontal braces. The front and back braces will be made up of 5 boards, 2 to wrap the outside and 3 that will be positioned between each post. I used my layout to find my exact cuts for these sections and pre-assemble the braces. This helps me ensure that all of my posts are spread out according to my layout. Once the brace is assembled, I start at the back of the structure and level across my 4 posts. I really need to take my time with this section because every single other measurement is going to be taken from this board. Once I'm confident my back brace is leveled and it's perfectly where it should be, I start running braces from the back to the front of the structure. These 2 braces on either side will be completely leveled, and if I do my job right, the front brace should be perfectly level when lined up with these 2. For measurements, I worked 100% off of my layout doc. If any of the boards didn't fit, it meant I either didn't square my foundation or I didn't cut the boards right, both of which happened during the course of this project.
This stupid little post decided to settle after I had finished all the foundation, and it did throw off my square. I ended up having to come back in here, jack this up, and throw some shims underneath it. Now these shims mostly fix the problem, but I was still about an inch and a half out of square by the time I finished the project, and that really pissed me off.
Now I have a level anchor, if you will, wrapped around my entire structure to take the rest of my measurements from. This basically becomes my foundation for everything else after that. I use the back horizontal brace to measure up to and set my top horizontal brace, and now I'm ready to actually lay in my support beams. The support beam placement is all about math and accurate measurements. I used a combination of 3D modeling precision and ChatGPT, which is basically my calculator now, to come up with 3 main measurements that, when all correct, should give me a 35-degree slope for my support beams. The height of beam intersection on the front post, the height of beam intersection on the back post, and the distance between the intersections along my beam. For good measure, I also took the measurements for the middle post and calculated a few diagonals to check my work. Measuring up from my horizontal braces, I marked where I should place each beam on my post. Then on my beam, I measured where I should place my posts along it. And then I just kind of trusted the math to work out. Using a level and a triangle, I checked my angle, and what would you know, it just works. Rinse and repeat 3 more times, and now I'm ready to connect my beams to each other using my joists. The purpose of my joists is to provide both lateral support to my structure and to provide a surface for my solar mount rails. The joists will run perpendicular to and between the beams. A second set of joists will run parallel to my beams and underneath where my rails will go. Now, my solar mounting rails will run underneath the seams of my solar panels and provide surface for my solar mounting brackets, which is why they need to be supported a little bit extra here. For all of these joists and rails, I just use the measurements from my layout doc. These base measurements can be modified in 1.5-inch increments to account for extra board spacing. By keeping the measurements true to the foundational layout, I can locate and correct errors while ensuring my spacing is consistent throughout my entire structure, which I like to do to make sure I stay closer to true and square throughout the project. Although not strictly necessary, I wrapped the front and back of my support beams for a slightly cleaner look, and I used cap boards between my rails. Now, with these cap boards, I ensure that they overlap any butt connections. I do this so I can add extra strength to my structure and tie everything together just a little bit better. Now, my wife had an excellent idea here. She suggested that I paint the top surface before I mount the solar panels, which is an excellent idea because, as you'll see later, there would be no getting in there to paint these surfaces after the fact. I made mounting the solar panels way harder than it needed to be. I may have gotten a little excited and rushed the process without a good plan, and that was a mistake. A good plan would have been to run a few string lines, made sure they were square, measure where my bracket should go, mount my brackets, and then mount my solar panels to my brackets. I didn't do this, but we did get the job done, so there's that. Let's take a second to talk about Z-brackets because I had never seen one of these before and I totally winged this. A Z-bracket has 2 holes on one side that mount to your rail or root. Each bracket comes with 2 self-tapping screws for this connection. The other side of your bracket has a channel and comes with a locking washer, bolt, and nut connection system. The channel portion also has stabilizers to butt your solar panel up against. Dealer's choice on how you get this stuff done, but I would highly suggest you don't rush this process. At the end of the day, you're just trying to get the thing secured to the thing using the other thing. Even if using a wood structure, I would suggest paying the extra for some metal solar mounting rails. The extra room underneath the panels is well worth it enough, but this also would provide a method to correct for leveling and squaring errors. I didn't pre-mount my grounding lugs to my panels, and I could barely reach the panel's grounding points after I had mounted them. I would definitely mount your ground lugs to your solar panels before you mount your solar panels to your solar ground mount.
No room to do it.
I didn't measure the Z-brackets out. I mounted one at a time, measured where the next panel should go, removed the first panel, set the brackets for the second panel, and then remounted the first panel. This sucked. At this point, we're pretty much done with the solar ground mount. If you're not adding a solar water heater in the center of your structure, you're probably going to want to add more diagonal cross beams for racking strength than what you see here. Because I'm putting in the little watershed thing, I've got framing plus OSB with a proper nailing schedule, which should give me some really good racking strength. Also guys, I'm not an electrician and I can't give electrical advice, but at this point here, I wasn't ready to connect my whole solar system, so I didn't mess with any connections until the whole system was ready to be put together all in one evening. And that is it for this section of the project. If you're thinking of building your own solar ground mount, I hope this video gave you some inspiration or at least some ideas. I'd love to hear about how you have or would handle building a solar ground mount. I've seen some really cool tilt setups here on YouTube that I would have loved to try, but I had what I like to call budgetary shortage, so nah. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you made it to this point in the video, number one, wow, thank you again. And two, please consider giving us a like and a subscribe. As always, we don't know what we're doing, but we're gonna do it anyway. And we hope to see you next week when we start assembling the solar components.